Hey friend, thanks for tuning in today. I am teacher Armando with BlueTree Secondary. So just want to share with you a common question from the Set 2 curriculum, okay, so to prep you better for your end of year exam. So we're going to go for direct inverse proportion, and there are quite several variations in this type of question. So there is the first kind that says like, um, that will probably give you another sentence that says, oh, when y is equals to 5, and then z is going to be equals to 4, right? So that is one of the variation that they will give. Like they might add in another sentence that says the value of y and z, okay? But then if you notice in this kind of question here, there is no value of y or z, which could cause students to be confused whenever there's, say, how come there's so little information given, right? And how are you going to start off the question? Now, the first thing you would need to do whenever you see a sentence like, oh, this y is directly proportional to z, x is inversely proportional to y, when you see such phrase, you have to translate that English sentence into a mathematics equation, okay? So typically, what is the default that we should put in our head already is if you see inverse proportion, you have to use the first quantity, write down the first quantity first, usually the left-hand side. Usually the first thing mentioned is on the left-hand side, and it's equals to k divided by the second quantity. Now, for direct proportion, however, it's going to be the first element again, the first quantity, equals to k times of the second quantity, all right? So that is the difference. And since this question says inversely, we are going to use the first formula on the left-hand side, all right? And don't get confused and don't get mixed up between like whether you put the square root z first or y first. It doesn't really matter. So we just put y first. That's the, by default, we always follow the first thing mentioned is the left-hand side equals to k divided by, and we just simply get the second quantity out, which is the entire square root of z. Now, sometimes they might not put a symbol, and they might actually put it in words. So what I mean by that is they might put a few extra words before z and say that this is varies inversely with square root of z, right? And then somehow, several students will, maybe they will read this word, but they tend not to be able to put it into the equation. Like they somehow will miss it out, right? I have seen it quite commonly. Yeah, so do not just follow the symbol over here. Please read the in between as well, okay? And if you miss this word, just a few extra words, it could be square, it could be square root, cube of z, and if you do not put the relevant symbol that is related to z, then the whole question will just be gone, right? All right. And so back into the first variation here, when I said just now, when the question could give you both value of y and z, and when that happens, usually what you will do is to find the fixed value of k, right? Which means that after you throw in the formula, you will substitute in y as 5, the z as 4, and the objective here is to find out what k is, right? So you'll probably move the square root of 4 to the right-hand side to make k the subject, and that will be 5 times 2, square root of 4 is 2, right? So k is 10. And after you get the value of k, then you will be putting it back into the formula again. There will be those kind of questions that will ask you to express an equation connecting y and square root of z, right? So this is going to be the kind of answer that the examiner is looking for. But however, back to this question again, you realize that there is actually nothing you can do here. There is no value of y, there is no value of z, which means there's no way to find k, right? And since we can't proceed by finding k, we will focus on the question immediately. And they say that z increases by 44%, all right? So we will basically let z, the original z, be 100%, okay? Now, for your school-wise, some of the schools might not be accepting like equations that says 100% is equals to z, because z is supposed to be a value. It doesn't actually directly is equals to 100%. So if your school doesn't accept that, you can write like REP, the short form for represents. That means you're going to say that z is currently, the original z is actually currently represented by 100%. If it increased by 44%, it's going to become how many percent? 144, right? There's a difference between increase by and increase to. So if you say increases, it doesn't make sense. So if you say it becomes or it ends up with, or it, so the word to, we just basically saying that at the end it becomes 44%. Okay, but if you say increase by, that means this is the amount that you are adding to the original. So which means that it's going to become 144%. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of shortcut here. First is dividing by 100. Okay, z divided by 100, that is to find 1%. Okay, and then if you times 144, that will make it become 144%. So you can leave it in fraction or you can leave it in decimal. Personally, I would prefer decimal. Okay, so I'll get 1.44z. All right, and this is going to be the new z, new value of z, yeah? Original one was just z, so now it becomes 1.44z. And we want to find out what happens to y when this z becomes 1.44z. So the next thing we're going to do is to substitute in this new z inside. So we say something like when z becomes 1.44z, then you're going to have y equals to k divided by 1.44z square root. Don't forget the square root. Now, because you are just replacing z with the new value here, so all of the number as well as z is under the square root, right? And the next thing you're going to do is to basically try and pull away. You want to pull this number, the coefficient number, to one side to make it become a coefficient, because you don't want it to interfere with the algebra portion, so that you can basically compare the original y with the new y. Okay, so what I mean by that is since a square root of 1.44z is the same as the square root of 1.44 multiplied to the square root of z, right? The square root of everything in there, so square root of 1.44 times square root of z. And I'm going to find the answer of that, which is going to give you, is it 1.2? All right, and I do not want, I don't like my number to be found in the denominator, because it is usually not so user-friendly when it comes to understanding for math, right? So I'm going to put this up to become like an overall coefficient. And what you understand about a number in the denominator is basically you have a number 1 above, right? If there is no number above, means that by default it's just 1. So 1 divided by 1.2 is what I'm supposed to simplify to. And I realize that if I do that, this is actually 5/6. So I'm going to change the 1.2 in the denominator, pull it away from the algebra expression, and to put it as 5/6 multiplied to k over square root z. All right, and then you can then see the original y, which is by default the expression has k over square root z, with the new y that has 5/6 as a coefficient that is being multiplied to k over square root z. So what does it mean with regards to the value of y? First, of course, it is decreasing, because from the number, how can you tell that it's decreasing? Because originally there is no number beside it. This means it's one such unit, right? 1 unit of k over square root z becomes 5/6 units of k over square root z. All right, and I will then put it into a fraction. Before you can get percentage decrease, typically we want to create a fraction first, then we convert it into percent. Okay, so because the percentage decrease, we want to find out the decrease to put as a fraction of the original. Remember, okay, the denominator, when it comes to percentage increase, decrease, percentage change, denominator is always the original. And then you use this to times 100%. All right, which means the decrease will be basically the difference between the units. So you don't have to bother writing the k over square root z anymore. it will make things look very complicated. So just look for the number of units. We know that originally it was 1 unit and it decreases to become 5/6, right? So the decrease is basically the difference. Divided by the original, which I say again, it was 1 unit. That is the decrease divided by the original. And don't forget to times 100, okay? Also take note that I think by now you should be expert with this, right? We put a percent beside the 100, but you do not press percent in the calculator, right? You are really multiplying by 100, but then the current Singapore syllabus for education, for math, is that they always want you to put a percentage so long that you're converting to a percent. It's just for a labeling purpose, yeah. And this is going to give you a fraction, right, of 16 whole and 2/3. And a few students might actually consider rounding this off to 3/7. Yeah, you can do that, but I would still prefer in fraction because number one, what if you round off wrongly, right? If you round to the wrong decimal place, it's supposed to round out, you become a round down, that kind of thing might happen. So fraction is the best because it's by default what is shown in the calculator already. Okay. I'll look forward to the next one. I will see you. Ciao.